Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 19th of March of 2025. Usually I start late, but I have a late commitment tonight, so I'm going to jump on this early. Hope everyone out there has themselves a wonderful day. It's a terrific day here in Cincinnati, but been on the breezy side. I tried to take this outdoors, so it didn't work. So I'm going to go ahead and just get right down to it. I have some new followers here and some new platforms I'm going to jump onto. So I'm going to touch on this real quick. This show will now hit the platforms of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and iHeart, starting with this particular episode. So anyone that wants to check me out on those platforms, you're more than welcome to. I will share the links across my platforms so you guys can see where I'm taking the show to, because it's now time to venture into bigger areas, bigger platforms, and it's something I've been looking forward to doing for quite some time, because that's what the platforms are there for, the media broadcasting, podcasting, live streaming, whatever you want to call it. The platforms are out there, and I will begin tonight, take the steps to explore all of the platforms and take the show into bigger and better ventures down the road. And I've always said with this sort of thing, you got to start small and build big. That's what I'm going to do now. This was part of my vision when I started this about at this point last year. And now I'm growing and letting this thing take it to bigger platforms, and we're going to see where it goes from there. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope everyone out there is more than willing to listen to me on those platforms once it starts to hit those as well. Again, they're not live at the moment. It'll be the replays. I'm still looking for ways to multi-stream on many more platforms. If anybody has any suggestions, I've always said I'm always open to it. Feel free to present me what you guys have, and I will take a look and listen. Now I'm going to go ahead and dig into this a little bit. For my people that have known me for a while, you know what I do. For some of the new ones, especially on the other platforms, I take multi-sports topics from basically the NFL, boxing, mainly the top two sports, maybe some other areas that need to be touched on, and just give an opinion on those. The sport of boxing more on the historical perspective, because even though I do today's boxing like others do, I just don't do it as much as before because it's gone too political, too crazed, and we have too many fans that are just too much into it that there's nothing worth talking about. So I focus more on the historical perspective of that sport, especially when I consider much of my boxing audience a bit of the people that have seen the sport as long as I have, or in some cases longer. I give my perspective on what we saw then and what can we look at, have today's perspective, on what took place years before. So I'm going to go ahead and cut right down to it. In the NFL, we know the proposed rule changes to take place. A couple teams submitted them. Let's start with this one. This one is interesting. This is the Detroit Lions submitting a proposal that the defensive holding or illegal contact, whatever you want to call it, should not be an automatic first down if it's a 5-yard penalty. You guys know the deal where the ball is in the air or before the pass is thrown or a receiver's route is impeded. There's some kind of thing where the defenders don't know how to keep their hands to themselves. We all know this. And we know if it's on the defensive side, it's an automatic first down. I understand the gripe of all of this, but the thing is, I don't know if it's going to pass or not through the owners committee or whatever the hell they do it. But whatever happens out of this, what I think is likely going to happen is they'll probably call more pass interferences to sure offenses get automatic first downs. I get the idea. I like the idea. The suggestion I think is sound and solid. But at the end of the day, whether it passes or not, I have no idea. I can't read the minds of the NFL owners or whatever, because I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a predictor, and I'm not an insider. I'm just an analyst. And I think the idea of this probably won't pass because they're so fixated on the offensive side of the ball. I get what's going on with this because I think the defense wants to have some leverage here, because we know in many recent years with all the rule changes, it's always been for the offense and against the defense. But I think this is something where I think the defenses want to say, hey, you're having all these rule changes. How about doing something for our side? I get it. Whether it passes or not, I don't know. It remains to be seen. But I like the idea of what they're doing is a way of saying, if you're going to make rules changes, at least give the defense a little bit of a chance here, because you've done everything for offenses and the defenses can't do a thing. They can't do expletive. And because of all your rules changes, you basically left the defense in a bind. So that's what I think this is all about. Whether it passes or not, as I said, I don't know. I doubt it because all the NFL rules changes. His wasn't always will be for the offenses. That's how it's always been for the last few years. And I expect those to continue when they do their little rules committee later on this year. Another one, actually, this is more for everybody because everyone was calling for this, is having the regular season overtime rules as the same as the playoffs. Guys, don't know, one possession either way. Both teams get one possession apiece, regardless of who scores a field goal first or a touchdown first. That should have been done way back when this was done. And I approve of it. And I think it's a good chance this one passes because it's something everybody wants. It goes back to the crying that those fans in Buffalo like to do because every time they can't beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, they complain about the NFL rules. And I'm sure that's what the topic of this one was. It took place the first time. I bet this is what happened again. And that's what we're more than likely going to get. And honestly, I don't have a problem with it. And I say this simply because it's how I think it should be. I mean, one team that scores down the field and scores a touchdown, and the other team doesn't get a chance. I mean, it should be fair play both ways, in my opinion. I mean, one possession both ways, but it doesn't deter the fact that in overtime you should be able to play defenses. When I talk about all the coaching staffs and the players, because it seemed like when people complain about the overtime rules, they forget they should be able to be allowed to play defense too, and they forget about it. That's the thing, because we talk about marching down the field for a touchdown. Is people forget defenses need to make plays, and it seemed like originally when this rule was constituted, they were trying to bail out the defense. That's why I wasn't for it. Now seeing all of this and seeing how everything's changed in the NFL, especially with overtime play and the football play and everything throughout the years, I'd be more for it. Let both teams have one possession, and let's see where it goes. One possession. If both teams score a touchdown, then go sudden death. One thing I would like to add to it, I think it should be the full 15 minutes instead of 10 minutes, because I think 10 minutes just makes it a little dried out. Go the full 15 minutes, put the extra time and extra drama in the game, because we know that's what the NFL likes. Do one possession each 15 minutes in overtime. I'd be for it. I think that would pass. It would win all over the place. That's what I think I would rather do with with that particular NFL rule. The third one is something that sort of divided everybody a little bit. I've weighed in on this many times back and forth. I'll admit I've gone both ways on it. This is the rule of where the better team with the better record hosts a playoff game. I mean, we've seen instances of this where that's like a couple years ago with the 7-9, or was 8-9 Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting the 11-win Dallas Cowboys in a playoff game, and where Dallas just went to Tampa and beat the brakes off of them. I don't have a problem with it, but I've said this all along. If you're an 11-win team, and it doesn't matter if you have to host a game or go to the road, regular season or playoffs, if you're good enough to win 11 games in the regular season, you should be good enough to win 11 games on the road, regardless of what the opponent's record is. I mean, that's what it comes down to. If you win 11 games, that means you get what, 8 to 9 games at home, depending on the 17-game schedule, 8 to 9 games on the road, again, depending on it. Each conference balances who has 9 home games. But if you win 11 games, you should be able to win anywhere in the NFL, whether it be on your home field or on the visitor's turf. And the first round, I get why everyone's complaining about it, because of these so-called, quote, divisions matter. Yes, it is a point. What I would be fine with, now I've seen this in the NBA a few times. What I'd be fine with is after you get out of the wild card round, we rearrange the seeding. The team with the better record in the division round, the conference championship, has a home field because a better record. I know it gets a little dicey with seeding, and it gets a little crazy and a little weird with it. But I think that's where the way to go. But as I said, if you're winning 11 or 12 games during the regular season, you should be able to win in the playoffs at home or on the road. Doesn't matter who you are or who the opponent is. You should be able to win. Not worry about what the records are, who the team is, who the opposing quarterback is. you should be able to win on the road if you win 11 to 12 games during the season. I get why everyone has an uproar over this both ways, but I think for this one, I said, you win 11 or 12 games, you should be able to win anywhere, at least have the confidence to do it. I mean, I'm trying to think. Who won I don't think anybody of significance won on the road. No, never mind. Washington won Tampa Bay and Detroit this past season on the road because they won 10 games in the regular season. That should tell you should be able to win anywhere on the regardless of the seeding, the venue, or whoever the opposing team or quarterback is. So I understand all aspects of it. I'd be fine with it being rearranged when it gets to the later rounds. Because I remember back in 2008 when the 8-8 Cardinals hosted the 13 or 14 win Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC title game. There was an outcry then about it, which I think at that point should have gone to Philly over Arizona. But I think it didn't matter because I thought Arizona was just clicking on all cylinders with Kurt Warner, and that's why they went up to the Super Bowl. So I think, in a way, seeding I don't think matters, especially if you're good enough to win 11 to 12 plus games. Because if you're going to go to the playoffs, you should at least be able to win at least a couple road games. I mean, 9-8 in today's NFL isn't going to get you into the playoffs. We all know this. I mean, 9-8 in the 17-game schedule, is like having an 8-8 record or a 7-9 record during the old 16-game schedule. You got to win 10 games, which means you got to win at least 1 or 2 on the road just to be able to get into one of those playoff spots. And if you're good enough to get in those playoff spots to win a game or 2 on the road, you should be able to at least win or be competitive in any road game in the playoffs. That's what it comes down to. Although with this rule, I think it's a slim to nil chance this one passes. I don't think the commissioners are going to want it because revenue on their home field, among many other things. So a couple might pass, but I think in the long run, I don't think this one does. And of course, the one that always divides NFL community, the football community, is once again, we're having a conversation about the tush push. You guys know that, the so-called tush push where it's like the 1 yard line, but Philly uses to push Jalen Hurts for a first down, or if it's like the goal line to push him into a touchdown. There have been teams that stopped it. I don't know what you're going to get when trying to pass it or not. I mean, I don't know if it will or not, but it goes again to show why there isn't enough emphasis on defense. And you guys were calling on the NFL rules guys to change the rules to try and alter it to help you guys out. I mean, I've seen it. Seen it stop a couple times this season. I have. I can't remember which was the last one. I think one is. I think the Rams did it in the divisional round against Philly in that game in Philadelphia. But it goes to show that you have to be able to do it on the field. The fact we have people still complaining about this play says a lot about the fans, the players, among many others, complain about a simple play with just get 1 yard. Actually, I have a better solution for this. When it's 1st and 10, you get 3 downs, 1st and 10, 2nd whatever, 3rd and whatever. Don't let them get it to like 4th and inches so they can use it. You have 3 downs to keep them at least 9 yards away from the first down marker. If you can't get away from the first down marker within those 3 plays, you deserve to get burnt on 4th down for whatever short yards it is that moves play down for another set of downs. That's what it all comes down to. I get it. Everybody's going to have their gripes about it, but it's 4 downs. It's not just the 1 down where it's just a half an inch or whatever, but it's 4 downs. If you can't stop them before you get to that point, you deserve to get burnt on the 4th down for a play that sets up for the first down or a touchdown or whatever it is. That's what it comes down to. Yet, I don't know if this one is going to pass. I know the hub all over the place for it, against it. It's crazy what this play has done basically to all the football audience. And I never had a problem with it. I said, if you have a problem with it, do something about it. It's 1st and 10, not 1st and 1. 1st and 10. If you let them get 9 yards to get on the 3 downs before it gets to 3rd and inches or 4th and inches, you're getting what you deserve in the end. Let's see where this one goes. I don't know which one this is going to go either way, but we'll see. So you got to come in here. Okay, somebody's coming at me here. I'll get to you in a minute because my thing isn't working properly. Now we get to talk to the NFL teams here. A second. Let's see. Tush push. Tush, my guy, Fantasy Pat, tush push, not good enough defenses to stop it. 100% agree. As I said, don't let it get to that point. I mean, it's 1st and 10, 2nd and 10, or 2nd and whatever, 3rd and whatever. You get it to any kind of short yardage situation and they have to use it, you put yourself in that situation before. That's what it comes down to. So shout out to my guy, Fantasy Pat. Hope you're doing good out there. Now we're going to touch on the real NFL stuff because anybody knows me knows I don't like talking about the rules much because I think sometimes they do too many changes with the rules. Every year is always something and basically sends everything in an uproar to where everyone has a problem with it. I think at some point the NFL needs to just have a time where no rules changes, just let the product be, and we'll just go from there. Now we're going to go on to Cleveland. And now we have the Cleveland quarterback carousel once again. Now we have Deshaun Watson supposedly posting a rehab video on X. And after getting Kenny Pickett from Philadelphia, the Browns are now apparently entertaining Carson Wentz. On top of rumorly using the 2nd overall pick to draft a Cam Ward or Jackson Dart or whoever. It's a symbolic of what the Browns franchise has been with the quarterback position ever since they came back in 1999. I mean, what is it like now? 200 quarterbacks? I mean, I lost count after 100. I mean, someone actually from Cleveland had every shirt of every Browns quarterback that wore Browns jersey at the quarterback position since they came back in 1999. I mean, they have no stability on there, and they wonder why they're a laughing stock. That's pretty much why. They had it in Baker Mayfield a few years ago, and we saw what happened. They gave up on him, sent 3 first-round draft picks to Houston for Deshaun Watson, and of course, eventually traded Baker Mayfield to Carolina. And basically, it's been egg in their face, and they're getting what they deserve as a result. The only time they went to the playoffs was because they had to call Joe Flacco off the couch. And as a result, when they called Joe Flacco off the couch, they had to go back to Houston, the team that forked out all that draft capital to Deshaun Watson, and get ran out of the playoffs. And they've been irrelevant ever since. Probably not sniffing the playoffs anytime soon because they're headed for a rebuild. Here's the thing. You have no stability at the quarterback position, you're going to struggle. And that's what's going on in Cleveland. That's the reason why they're the laughingstock in Northeastern Ohio. And that's why I said to them countless times, when it came to this trade 3 years ago, they made their bed, they can go lie in it. Because they're getting exactly what they asked for when they made the trade, because they had their quarterback in Baker Mayfield, decided to dispose of him for Deshaun Watson, and forked out 3 first-round draft picks. And not only that, fully guaranteed that $230 million contract. And now they're in not only financial limbo, but now they're in quarterback limbo. And that's what's happened as a result. Good luck up there, Cleveland. And now you guys have Kenny Pickett. And you're going to get Carson Wentz. Probably going to draft a Cam Ward or a Jackson Dart or someone like that. Where I think if you draft someone at the number 2 draft position at the quarterback, especially a guy like Cam Ward, you start him immediately. It's plain and simple. If you're going to bring someone in to start and then have a guy like Cam Ward sit, it's going to be more laughter in the Browns' face. And basically, I'm not going to feel sorry for him because I told him 3 years ago after the Deshaun Watson trade what was coming, and they didn't want to listen. Shame on them. But you guys can't jump off the bridge now. You made the bed. Go lie in it. And please just do away with the Cleveland Browns. Nobody wants to hear from you. That's why Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati are just having the time of their lives with you, among many other teams in the NFL. Oh, every time Cleveland wants to put their names out there and they want to drag me into it, I always have something to say. I just have to remind them of what happened 3 years ago with the Watson trade, because that's the end all be all right there. Now they say that they are going to jump off the bridge because of it. No, you guys wanted Deshaun Watson 3 years ago. You guys were fine with the trade 3 years ago when you made it. Don't jump off the bridge now. You can go down with Deshaun Watson, all your fans up there in Northeastern Ohio, because you're getting exactly what you deserve. Now to Minnesota, and I'll touch on these two real quick before the big one here in Cincinnati. It was announced that Minnesota is going to go ahead with JJ McCarthy as their quarterback, and they're not going to entertain Aaron Rodgers or anybody else as a starter. Makes sense. You drafted him 7th overall, and you basically have the roster set up for him to be successful. I mean, talk about the offensive line, which is solid. You have, of course, that defense. You added Javon Hargrove and Jonathan Allen, a very stud defensive front with Brian Flores, their defensive coordinator, is going to have more success. Of course, when we talk about the receivers he's going to throw to, talking about the standout Justin Jefferson, and of course, Jordan Addison. And of course, the standout tight end, TJ Hawkinson. I think McCarthy will be fine. No one's asking this guy to be Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, or anybody else. Just provide some form of stability at the quarterback position. And when you drafted him 7th overall, the way you did, you got to throw him into the Wolves. Simply put. Reason being, you didn't draft this guy 7th overall to just all of a sudden be a long-term backup. And when you basically let Sam Darnold walk to Seattle, you basically said, JJ McCarthy is our guy. It's plain and simple. I think he'll be fine in the NFL. I don't think it'll send to the second coming of Dan Marino or Tom Brady. But I think he'll be a solid quarterback. But what they do in Minnesota, being a solid quarterback is all they need. It's pretty much it. And speaking of the topic of Aaron Rodgers, I know I have some Steelers followers out here wanted to hear about this. I guess he's going to make his decision between Pittsburgh and the Giants. The thing is, I think the whole NFL needs to just do away with this guy and simply just tell him to go kick rocks. It's not because the guy's not a great quarterback. I mean, he had his time. He was phenomenal at his best. But he's become a full-blown attention-seeking narcissist and a coward to where he brings baggage to your team because he wants the spotlight. He loves it, being an egomaniac and a narcissist to where he wants to be the reason everything happens. Do people not forget, how the Jets debacle took place the last couple of years? Shoot. Last time I saw this guy, when he was relevant, he basically no-showed when he played the San Francisco 49ers in a very cold playoff game when he quarterbacked Green Bay, I think it was like 3 years ago, and only put up 13 points. And the year after, he couldn't lead Green Bay to the playoffs, was eliminated in the regular season finale by Detroit. Of course, he goes to the Jets. We know the story there. I mean, maybe he can go someplace to have a bit of a renaissance, but with his ego and his narcissism, is it really worth it? There's a reason why teams who need a quarterback should just stay away from him, and many of them have. It's not because the guy's not a great quarterback. It's the baggage he brings. Now the guy wants to make his regular appearances on a Pat McAfee show. Sorry, it's not worth it. That's why the Jets, I guess, said they're going to dispose of him if he wants to go to the Pat McAfee show. I don't know what the details of that are. But then again, the Jets are not necessarily the sharpest tools in the shed either. I mean, we've seen it. Now, granted, they got Justin Fields, but the organization is still a mess. But for Rodgers, I'm going to be surprised if he stays in New York and goes to the other side and becomes a part of the Giants, because he wants to start and be the reason a team is successful, because he loves the attention and the spotlight. Remember, it's been 15 years since he last went to the Super Bowl in 2010 when he won it with Green Bay. Now, he's had career accolades are significant. There's no doubt about it. But he hasn't done anything of relevance since he was knocked out of the playoffs when he was in Green Bay by San Francisco. I think it was 3 to 4 years ago in that divisional round where he only led the Packers to 13 points. So, I mean, they talked about Pittsburgh wanting him. Maybe they could get a mini renaissance out of him. But is it worth the baggage that he's going to bring? I mean, Pittsburgh brought back Mason Crosby, and I said all along, I thought they should have kept Crosby over in Pittsburgh over the last year, whenever he left, because I thought Crosby was a good fit for what the Steelers did and the way they run that team. But they decided to go to Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and we know how that turned out. And if the Pittsburgh wants to bring in a veteran quarterback, maybe instead of going after Aaron Rodgers, why don't you just bring Russell Wilson back? I mean, he knows the system. He knows everything. And you're going to have Mason Crosby. I mean, I get you want to upgrade a Rodgers, but is it worth it at age 41 with the baggage he brings? I mean, come on. There's some people who think he's still a top-flight quarterback. I don't know if I go that far. But just because of who he is and what he is, maybe everybody in the NFL, from the players, the owners, and even the fans and the media people, needed to stop mentioning this guy's name. The less you mention it, the better. Now to the giant news that took place earlier this week in Cincinnati. It was the extensions of both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I'm not going to lie when I say I didn't see the T. Higgins one coming, because that one was complex. Jamar Chase, I said all along, they should have had that done last season. Now they had it done this season, a year too late. You could probably say that. But I'll acknowledge it was well-earned and well-deserved, simply because, they both played to their value. Jamar Chase, I think, got the AAV of 40 plus over what Myles Garrett got for the highest non-quarterback in NFL history. T. Higgins got the highest wide receiver, number 2, or whatever you want to call it, in NFL history. Again, I don't have a problem with it, but let me just put everything on notice with this, because I held back. I let everybody have their 5 minutes of glory, especially Bengals fans who were having the psychotic, sick-headed, grotesque obsession of wanting these guys paid. They got it. The platform is officially changed. You're paying Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins over almost $500 million, maybe close to $600 million from now to the end of the decade. You better generate results. 9 and 8 seasons alone isn't going to do it anymore. All the excuses you used over the years, no defense, Zach Taylor, they're done. Those 3 guys you paid over $500 million from now to the end of the decade. You better bring Super Bowls over here. You know, as I say playoff games, I didn't say playoff wins. I didn't say conference championships. It's Super Bowls or bust now. You paid them all the dollars, get the results. Means nothing anymore. I don't care about bad defenses. That ship sailed. I don't care about a bad offensive line. That ship sailed. I don't care about who's the running back. That ship sailed. Everything is sailed because this is what you guys wanted. This is what you asked for. You did this 2 seasons ago when you had the sick narrative of wanting to be Joe Burrow paid the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. You got it in 2023 when the boot to ball was placed on the kickoff of the 2023 NFL season. You pressed for 2 years to have Chase and Higgins paid on the Cincinnati roster. You got that. It's officially over now. Generate the results or be prepared for some massive, massive, massive blowback that you're not going to like. Because I said all along about you guys in Cincinnati, the fans, the super fans, the media people, the content creators, whatever you want to name it, each and every single one of you. You can't take criticism or feedback or pushback well to where you resort to the mute and block button. Those days are over. You wanted what you got it. Now it's time to put up or shut up. Get some Super Bowls done. I'm not talking about playoff appearances. I'm not talking about divisional rounds, division titles. Nothing. It's Super Bowls or bust. If you're going to pay that kind of dollar figure to 3 players over, it's going to be the next 5 years, which is from now to the end of the decade, you better get some results because it's all about the results now. I don't care about stat sheets. They do nothing. Individual awards, done. Forget it. It's Super Bowls or bust. If you're going to pay this kind of money, demand results, get results. Because if you don't, paying 3 players $500 million for about a 5-year period will be one of the all-time financial investment backfires in the history of financial investments. I don't think anyone would crash as bad as that if you guys can generate 1 Super Bowl. I mean, actually, 1 wouldn't be good enough. Probably need at least 2. You guys wanted, this is what you wanted. This is what you asked for. Don't absolve yourself from any of it. Confront it, be men, demand the results, because that's the platform is now. I mean, you think about it for a second. All this dollar figure is just like the equivalent of getting a promotion in the workplace. Simply put, it's nice to get the dollars when you sign the paper to get the promotion, but guess what else comes with it? Added responsibility, added expectations. That's what happened here. You got the contracts done with these 3 guys over the past 3 years, Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. You got it. I don't have a problem with it. But you better generate results because 9 and 8 seasons are not going to be good enough. I mean, the division titles won't be good enough. Conference titles won't be good enough. You better start bringing home Lombardi trophies, Super Bowl trophies, because otherwise it's an intentional financial failure that you guys press a narrative for. And if that happens, it'll be the all-time biggest backfire in the history of financial backfires, and I will be the one to let you guys know about it. Because this is what you guys push for. I said all along, I don't have a problem with these guys being paid. The problem was not that. The problem was the fans, the super fans, and the media people pushing this narrative like a bunch of psychos, sick-headed in the head. This is what they wanted because they were so sick-headed, obsessed with wanting talent to be paid here in Cincinnati. And they got it. Now, shut your mouths, get out there, generate the results. Because that's all it's about now. Results. Not winning football games, not winning, division titles, not winning conference titles. Win the whole damn thing till these contracts are up. And if you don't, it'll be an all-time financial blunder, and everyone's going to give it to you. And I'm going to sit back and join in the fun. Because I said all along, Bengals fans are the problem. Bengals super fans are the problem. The media people, Channel 5, Channel 9, 12, Fox 19, the radio stations 1530, WEBN with that idiot Sarah Elise, whatever the hell she calls herself. The other newspaper people like Kate Adams and Kelsey Conway, they're the problems. This is what they wanted. Now shut up and generate results, because it's put up or shut up time. We've all called you out on it. Other fan bases have. Back up what you said, or just get the hell out. That's what you're seeing right now in Cincinnati. And trust me, I'm not expecting anything out of this. And I'm going to be the one to deliver it. Because I don't mind players getting paid. I mean, I get it. This is the league what it's come down to. It has. I don't have a problem with it, as I said countless times. If you're going to pay this kind of a contract to these kind of talent, especially the caliber of Burrow and Chase, who could probably argue is top 5 in their positions respectively, and T. Higgins as a wide receiver 2 or whatever you want to call it, probably top 10 in that category, generate the results. Your excuse of a bad defense is over. Your excuse of a bad offensive line is over. Your excuse of a slow start is dead. Your excuse of having Zach Taylor calling bad games is dead. Because all the excuses are dead. It's on those 3 now. Either they get the job done or they don't. That's what it comes down to. I'll be sitting back and watching. And speaking of the topic of Joe Burrow, the Netflix series Quaterback is on with him, Jared Goff, and Kirk Cousins. Interesting trio here. I think I would be interested to see on the Burrow side how he had to put up with what he had to put up with last season, because I'll admit, as much of a critic I was, the guy put up a phenomenal season when it comes to his stats. I mean, got the comeback player of the year, richly deserved. But interested to see how he handled a lot of stuff that went on in Cincinnati, because it was a mess, especially on the defensive side, especially with the coaching staff, and especially with the fans and the super fans. I should add those also. I'll be interested to see how he was handling it, because one thing I've always said about Joe Burrow, he doesn't put as much out there as you think. He keeps everything inside. He keeps everything closed door, mild-mannered, great young man, outstanding quarterback, top 10. Some people say top 5. That's a stretch, but I'll say top 10 to be safe. Interesting how his journey was, because remember, twice he had to come back from season-ending injuries. Last season, he had to deal with a bunch of, not as bad stuff, but a bad defense and an offensive line that can't block. One thing I would like to know in regards to him, how he feels over the last 5 years since he came into this league, being the most sacked quarterback in the NFL and not having an offensive line that truly protects him. Because I would like to see that something has to come out of his mouth at some point about that. That's one thing I've been always wanting to know, how it's like in his mind, having to run for his life when the offensive line does not protect him at all. Of course, Kirk Cousins' story there, had the ACL problem in Minnesota, signed with Atlanta, and apparently was not happy when Atlanta drafted Michael Penix Jr. Interesting to see how his mindset is. Jared Goff is an interesting story. Remember, he was just basically done for in LA. Basically, him and Sean McVay didn't get along great. They sent him to Detroit for Matthew Stafford. Of course, first-round picks were involved. But, of course, Stafford won the Super Bowl in his first year in LA in Super Bowl 56. Goff actually sent it to a pretty darn good quarterback. But people wrote him off after he was traded from LA to Detroit. Managed to get Detroit to an NFC title game and the best record last season. Interesting to see how this mindset is. I haven't seen much of this show because I think it's especially ones on Netflix, where Netflix shows where sports get a little dry. Because I tried it with the Vince McMahon documentary and it wasn't all that great. I'll be tuning into this to see how this is. Maybe some of my regular football followers can explain to me how this is, because I've never been fond of Netflix documentary much. Maybe something I should tune into, because the mindset of a quarterback different than basically any position in the NFL, you could probably say. Because actually, they got 3 good ones here. I'll acknowledge that. 3 good ones, 3 intriguing stories. I'm sure you guys will probably enjoy it. Something I'll probably tune in myself. Now, to reintroduce myself, I see a couple of new people over here who have recently followed me on these platforms. I switched go from the NFL to boxing, and my boxing is more about the historical perspective because I like to think of what happened then and have a reflection of what we know today versus what we knew then, because it's always two different mindsets. Let's start with this one here. We're going to go back to 1974. This is the return match between Roberto Duran and his Esteban DeJesus. This was a rematch of what took place a couple years before, where DeJesus got the win, but didn't win the championship because basically Roberto Duran came in overweight, and basically they said they couldn't call it a championship fight because of it. And DeJesus got the win against a lethargic Duran. But in this rematch that took place at Madison Square Garden 51 years ago, 51 years ago, Roberto Duran showed the world why he was Manos de Piedra. Now, the first round, it was like the first round of the first fight. DeJesus had his moments. He floored Duran. But this time, Roberto Duran said, hit the heck with it. I'm taking over winning this thing, and just controlled the fight from the second round to the end, where the relentless pressure and the high-level skill of Roberto Duran took over Esteban DeJesus, gradually wore him out, and put him down and out for the count in the 11th round to retain his lightweight championship of the world. Esteban DeJesus is an all-time underrated lightweight. I mean, he's an all-time great underrated lightweight. We talk about the all-time great lightweights. I think he's probably some of the top 15, top 20. I mean, his resume itself speaks volumes. Just goes to show how great Roberto Duran was in that weight class for him to come from the canvas in that rematch to get revenge and just walk right through Esteban DeJesus after that. And Roberto Duran, as I said before, the casual fan gets so mixed up on what happened on 1980 at No Mas in Louisiana when he quit against Sugar Ray Leonard. His legacy was before No Mas, and this second fight, which is the second of a trilogy with Esteban DeJesus, was probably its peak point for him because he showed everything why he was and has the distinctions he had of the greatest Latino fighter ever, arguably the greatest lightweight ever, probably a top 15, top 20 all-time great fighter ever, and maybe the greatest Latino fighter of all time, which I'll talk about that here in a second. But he needed this fight because he was about written off when he fought DeJesus the first time because he was lethargic, but he came back in the rematch, handled DeJesus, took care of business, and of course it led to the third fight, where it was a terrific fight, but Duran again handled DeJesus to become the undisputed two-belt lightweight champion of the world, just essentially clean out the division. Roberto Duran's place in history, you can talk about No Mas all you want. You can talk about it all you want. It's always going to be talked about. I understand it. But his legacy, his greatness, you could say was before that, because when he ruled the lightweight division at a time when no one in that south of the heavyweight division was basically thought of at the time because, Sugar Ray Robinson had retired. We hadn't seen Sugar Ray Leonard yet. But Roberto Duran basically made a splash in the lightweight division. It was a box office hit at Madison Square Garden and at the indoor pavilion at Cesar's in Las Vegas, especially the night when he knocked out Ray Lampkin. His legacy will always be the lightweight division. And you could probably say peaked when he went to welterweight and beat Ray Leonard in Montreal in their first fight in 80. That was Roberto Duran's peak. Too many people get so fixated in the recency bias and think about him in that infamous video where he basically just waved his arm at the referee Octavio Miron to say no monster Sugar Ray Leonard. But that was who Roberto Duran was. His legacy was before that, and he's an all-time great. Of course, people remember him with the Four Kings with Leonard, Hearns, and Hagler. That was more namesake. Granted, he held his own during the 80s also, as he did in the 70s. Beat Davey Moore, shocked Iran Barkley, gave Hagler the toughest fight of his career. But his legacy was, and always will be the lightweight division up until when he beat Leonard in 80, where he peaked. Arguably the greatest lightweight ever, of course, subject to opinion, with guys like Benny Leonard, Pernell Whitaker, Joe Gans, Henry Armstrong, Ike Williams, just to name a few. In my opinion, the greatest Latino fighter ever. Because when you think of the great Latin American fighters that came after him, like Salvador Sanchez, Alex Arguello, Julio Cesar Chavez, Felix Trinidad, among many others, go on and on to the guys like Morales, Barrera, Marquez, Cotto, Canelo Alvarez. When Roberto Duran started to make his splash in the 70s and 80s at Madison Square Garden and in Las Vegas, that was a trendsetter for all the Latin American fighters. That's why I rate him number one. in that regard. Great, there probably some guys up before him that have honorable cases. Some after him might have honorable cases due to accomplishments. But because he opened the door for the Latin American community, that was what Roberto Duran was. And 51 years ago today, he got his revenge on Esteban DeJesus to retain his lightweight championship to cement his place in boxing history. A lot of you guys need to do more research on Roberto Duran because no Mas is not his legacy. Doesn't help it, I'll acknowledge that, but it's not the end game with him. His legacy was before then. From one legacy to another, it was 48 years ago today that it was George Foreman losing to Jimmy Young at the Roberto Clemente Stadium, or is known as Coliseo de Roberto Clemente, where he basically just got outboxed and lost a unanimous decision. Basically, it was like the carbon copy of his loss to Muhammad Ali. Of course, the big story here was he had that 10-year hiatus to where, the story we know that became a preacher, became a minister, that got rid of that R&B style looking afro and mustache, shaved it all off, comes back 1987, marches on to 1994 to regain the heavyweight championship of the world when he knocked out Michael Moore. But maybe just being away from the sport was what the doctor ordered for George Foreman, because he was so fixated on a rematch with Muhammad Ali. He sometimes tried to be a rebel in a Sonny Liston in his first 10 year, almost like what Mike Tyson was before Mike Tyson. And basically, when he fought Jimmy Young, he just had his ears boxed off. And he said at that point, that's when he found religion and became a preacher and a minister out in his hometown of Houston, Texas. Started up the George Foreman Youth Center, which, helped kids off the streets. And he helped kids and young adults into the boxing field. And we know the rest of the story. But it was this night that he had the 10-year retirement 48 years ago today. The rest of his career, as I chronicled on other shows, is history. Ascended to the heavyweight champion of the world in 1994, where he basically had the last laugh on everybody who thought his comeback was just simply a laugh at that point. But it was what George Foreman was from the first career to the second career. The first career, he was basically just get out there, rough you up, beat you down, and knock you out. Second fight, he was more economical. He learned how to develop a left jab, almost borderline Larry Holmes-like. And that's how he was successful. Of course, what helped him was he was trained by the legendary great Archie Moore, who himself fought well into his 40s and helped orchestrate Foreman's comeback up until the Holyfield fight, until Archie Moore's health deteriorated. And then he brought on the legendary Angelo Dundee. The real irony of this was it was Dundee who was in Muhammad Ali's corner when Ali beat Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle. Of course, Dundee helped Foreman regain the championship in 1994 when he knocked out Michael Moore in the 10th round to basically cap off his legacy, and we know what that spun off. But it seemed like the 10 years off did George Foreman good, but everybody thought it didn't. At the end, it was George Foreman who knew what he was doing, but he did get his ears boxed off by Jimmy Young when they fought in 1977 at the Coliseo de Roberto Clemente in San Juan, Puerto Rico. George Foreman's just an amazing specimen, I'll tell you that. Not the greatest ever, but in terms of just an amazing specimen in that ring and as a person, we talk about celebrity makeovers. No one was more of that than George Foreman. And you just got to have to salute that guy. I mean, he just had a movie about him not too long ago. He still has a grill and all the endorsements. He's one of a kind. And speaking of one of a kind, it was 34 years ago today where a heavyweight clash took place. And it was actually a decent scrap between Mike Tyson and Donovan Razor Ruddock. One thing I liked about this was a heavyweight eliminator. The winner of this was going to be the number one contender across the board. This fight actually had a long build-up. They were supposed to fight in 89 when Mike Tyson was champ, but Mike Tyson pulled out because of reasons. This is titled to Buster Douglas. And basically he was on a quest to get it back. Where basically it was determined the winner of this was going to get the winner of the proposed Evander Holyfield-George Foreman fight, which took place about a month later. Story of this fight, even though Mike Tyson was sort of on this downturn after he got beat up by Buster Douglas, still managed to control Ruddock throughout most of this fight, even though Ruddock had his moments with that left-hand uppercut, which hurt Tyson in the middle rounds. Tyson floored Ruddock. Ruddock came back, came back in round 6 to hurt Tyson. Tyson came back with a flurry, although a few punches looked like they missed. Got a controversial stoppage win in a fight that basically set up a mini riot after the fight where they were trying to go after Richard Steele, and all chaos broke loose. But when you watch this fight, this was symbolic of the post-Michael Spinks version of what Mike Tyson was and the post-Buster Douglas version of what Mike Tyson was and became, because that oral invincibility was gone. His biggest lookout was that Razor Ruddock was just a one-handed fighter at this point. His right hand was basically just flat out done. Done of all duns, because basically left jab, left uppercut, left hook with Ruddock. But Mike Tyson was in this fight where it was a give-and-take fight in the middle rounds. Even though he controlled the fight, getting hit unnecessarily, the head movement, the body punching was no longer there. And basically, that was all she wrote for Mike Tyson. His biggest lookout with this was Razor Ruddock was a one-handed fighter. And mind you, this was at a time when the heavyweight division was starting to get hot. And I mean hot. Holyfield was a champ. The Foreman comeback. The young guns like Ruddock, Bo, Lennox Lewis, Ray Mercer, Tommy Morrison, just to name a few. Larry Holmes eventually came back in the mix. But Mike Tyson, you could see it in this fight that the end was near. If it wasn't there already. The ability to duck and slip and the ferocious attack to come at you, that was gone. He had times where he swung and missed Ruddock so bad that I thought Tyson was going to fall into the commentator's lap. Even the commentator Steve Albert and Freddie Pacheco said he can feel his breeze above us. That's how close he was. There was no way, no how that Mike Tyson was going to get back into form. Of course, the craziness after this fight prompted a rematch. It was a give-and-take fight both ways. Good scrap. Decent win for Tyson, the rightful winner. Even though he floored Ruddock twice, he lost 3 points because of inability to keep his punches up. Razor Ruddock fought a big chunk of this fight with a broken jaw. Kudos to him because he was a tough guy and a big puncher. Of course, Mike Tyson once said this guy punched like a bleeping mule kick. But the 2-fight series with Tyson and Ruddock was symbolic of what Mike Tyson was once that oral invincibility was gone, because there were times Razor Ruddock hit him with punches he normally would make you miss and make you pay. He was a sitting duck. His biggest lookout was Razor Ruddock was just a one-handed fighter at that point. Granted, a strong puncher, decent heavyweight who was a top contender. But at the end, this was who Mike Tyson was in the post Michael Spinks version, the after Buster Douglas version, because the oral invincibility was dead. Of course, we know what happened after he got the 2 wins over Ruddock. Fakes the rib injury to avoid Evander Holyfield. Winds up in jail. Comes out. It was basically never the same. Won a paper championship. Lost it to Evander Holyfield. Ducked Lennox Lewis twice because the guy was in it for the dollars by his own admission. But still, a fighter that everybody loved talking about. He was that one that got you to watch TV and talk about. That was who Mike Tyson was. Still a polarizing figure because people are still talking about him to this day, especially after that garbage exhibition he had with Jake Paul, which I don't blame Mike Tyson for. I blame more on Jake Paul. But that's who Mike Tyson was at the end of the day. But when he fought Razor Ruddock, you can see it. If you watch the fights, he was done. He just lucked out. Razor Ruddock was just even though somewhat of a live body, a worn-down fighter. Ruddock would have another chance to get back to that next level. A year later, demolished in 2 rounds by the great Lennox Lewis. But they had a decent 2-fight scrap, Tyson and Ruddock. Must watch if you guys are interested in watching a good classic fight. And speaking of classics, I tried to talk about this the other night, but my equipment went to the caboose, but I managed to get it back. I'm going to give a 30-minute bonus on this. I don't like talking on the show this long, but given what I'm about to talk about, it deserves a lot of credence. Just a minute ago, I was on the Fighter Series today and last week talking about these 2 fighters. Now I'm going to talk about the collision that took place 35 years ago at the Las Vegas Hilton in Las Vegas. It was the first showdown between Julio Cesar Chavez and Medrick Taylor. The fight everybody wants, the kind of fight everybody wants, and everybody got it. Undefeated champ versus undefeated champ at their purest peak versus at their purest peak. Under the age of 30, under the age of 30. These 2 guys basically were ready to go. There wasn't much really build-up you had to do because they called each other out for a while. Taylor, the 84 Olympic gold medalist, won a world title in his 21st professional fight when he beat the professionally experienced Buddy McGirt. Chavez ascended to the distinction of the best fighter in the world pound for pound. Wound up amassing a massive record of 68-0. Of course, there's some interesting stories with that one. World titles in 3 different weight classes, the established fighter. This fight was a case of the styles matched. Taylor was perfect for Chavez and vice versa. I mean, I could go on about all the hoopla and all of this. This was the purest pick'em fight ever between 2 undefeated champions at their purest peaks of their careers. And that's what Taylor and Chavez brought 35 years ago at the Las Vegas Hilton. Actually, this should have been the outdoor pavilion of Caesar's Palace. I don't know why it wasn't there. Crowd seated 9,300. Probably about 8,500 to 8,800 was going to cheer for Julio, because everybody knows when Julio comes to the States, we have a Mexican invasion, whether he fights in Vegas, Atlantic City, New York, or Chicago. And he did it here with Vegas. Taylor controls the fight, as you know, dominates the big chunk of this fight with his speed, lateral movement, combinations. Probably the flashiest fighter at the time, with Ray Leonard sidelined. And basically, he showed the flash throughout this, especially the early rounds when he built the lead, and it looked like he had this fight under control. And basically, up to this point, you'd probably say he won easily the first 6 rounds of this fight. But something was happening as he was, while he was throwing and landing. It was basically a 2-to-1 to 3-to-1 ratio. But those ones that Julio was landing, even though he was outlanded 3-to-1, started to do their damage. Because Medrick Taylor's face was starting to fall apart. I mean, first, he had a cut lip, which cut from the second round onto the rest of the fight, which it turned out it was cut in a sparring session. Then he had blood coming out of his nose, a small cut underneath his eye, and both eyes were getting grotesquely swollen. Even I think early in the fight, Taylor later said he had a fractured bone in his left eye, courtesy of a Chavez overhand right, which he said it was blurred him for the rest of the way. But even though Taylor was still winning, and he was still winning rounds because he a 2-to-1 to 3-to-1 ratio, it was those ones that started to outdo the 2s and 3s, and he had a feeling something was going to happen. And we got to that point because Taylor was starting to fall apart piece by piece by piece. And the key moment came, actually before the end, the key moment came at the end of the 11th round, where a sneaky left hook wobbled Taylor like seconds before the bell so bad he had to be helped to his own corner. And here's where we have a lot of fun. The trainers, Lou Duva and George Benton, 2 of the most brilliant minds you could probably see in the sport of boxing, basically told Medrick Taylor he needed to go to win the last round, when basically he had the fight won. Think about it. He had the fight won, and the Taylor camps telling him he has to go win. And that's how he fought. Minute of the 12th round, Chavez is there for any kind of a punch. Taylor swings and misses so badly he falls down to his knee. That's when you knew the end of Taylor might be coming. And the question was, could he find a way to survive the remaining 2 minutes? Because his body was just collapsing and falling apart. Gouged with blood, gouged with swollen eyes. The energy level was tanking. His beating was going inside and out all over the place. Could he just find a way to survive? Because those 2 minutes felt like a lifetime for him. Actually, also for Julio, because he needed a knockout to win this fight. What happened here? We're going to fast forward to the last 25 seconds of the particular 12th round, where it was the right hand by Chavez that beat the right hand by Taylor, and now Taylor's really shaking. Another 1-2, and Taylor starts to wobble along the ropes. Chavez pulls back, tries to set him up for a counter. After a very, very lethargic, lazy jab, basically like this almost, by Medrick Taylor, a counter right hand by Chavez, and down goes Medrick Taylor. Taylor pulls himself up. I mean, he pulls himself up despite his face falling apart. He pulls himself up to the count of 5. Richard Steele's counting in his face 6, 7, 8, 9. Ask him once if he's okay. And the second time, as he asked him the second time he was okay, Medrick Taylor turns his head away as Steele was asking him the questions. With his face all battered, Richard Steele stops the fight, and Chavez is declared your winner by a knockout at 2:58 of the 12th round in one of the most wild finishes maybe ever. The stoppage will always be controversial both ways. I mean, I always said with the stoppage, if you think he stopped it too quickly, you have a winning argument. If you thought he stopped it correctly, you have a winning argument. This is probably the only one where anyone who says anything has a winning argument. But I've always said the one thing that's always missed for the last 35 years was the giant pass that Taylor, Lou Duva, and George Benton got when they had the fight won, how they completely mismanaged the fight down the stretch. They had basically won. All they had to do was just not get hit and not get caught. They didn't know this. I don't know what the reason is. And what happened in the end, Taylor got caught, and that was all she wrote. And also, it didn't help Mildred Taylor, as Steele was counting Mildred Taylor out. Lou Duva was on the ring apron trying to distract Richard Steele for whatever reason. Turned out it was Mildred Taylor who was distracted, because when Steele was asking Taylor if he was okay, he would turn away and basically look at Richard Steele he would turn around and look at Lou Duva in the corner. And Taylor later on by his own admission said that was a distraction. And basically that was why it happened. Of course, Lou Duva, being who Lou Duva is, decided to go after Richard Steele and protest the stoppage. Understandably so. But Lou Duva needs to look at himself in the mirror, simply because he was one of the reasons why all of this happened. Had this been managed better by him, George Benton, this would not have happened, because they just deprived Mildred Taylor of probably the biggest win of his career and his life when you think about it. I mean, the stoppage is going to be talked about forever. I'll leave that to you guys. Each side has a winning argument. But when you have a chance to basically kill the clock and be proactive, that's where Mildred Taylor and his cornermen lost it, because they weren't proactive. They thought something different that everybody else did. Of course, it was an article of Sports Illustrated then by William Knack, who basically said he didn't know what fight they were watching, because it turned out Mildred Taylor had the fight won on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards. Even if Chavez got the knockdown credit, which he did, it would have been a 2-point round. Even then, he still wouldn't have been able to win the fight, because Taylor was so up on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards. But that was where I said, if you have to look back, Mildred Taylor and his cornermen completely mismanaged us down the stretch, and a fight they had under control. All they had to do was avoid anything crazy. They didn't. That's where the blame goes toward. You can talk about the stoppage all you want. It's always going to be talked about. Whatever side you take, it's a winning argument. But Mildred Taylor's corner, Lou Duva and George Benton, 2 of the all-time brilliant minds in boxing history, got the biggest pass when they just couldn't manage this correctly. And of course, the worst came from Mildred Taylor. Went to the hospital. Turned out he was urinating pure blood. And actually, I think someone said he vomited pure blood, which was crazy. He goes to the hospital, treated for the facial fracture. His face, both eyes were swollen all over the place. Needed a blood transfusion to replace, I think it was like the equivalent of almost a pint to 2 pints of blood in his own way. But Mildred Taylor just got beat up. Even if he got the decision win, if we would have given him the win, how about it? Even if we would have got it, the beating he took, he paid a stiff, swift, hard price, and he was never going to recover from it because of the physical aspect of it. And that was basically it. He did manage to win a welterweight title. Then got fought in 92, a nonsensical fight against Terry Norris where he was just blown out in 4 rounds. Loses to Crisanto Espana. And then the eventual rematch with Chavez did happen, although that was probably 2.5 years past his expiration date. And he got wiped out by Chavez in 8 rounds. For Chavez, ascended to an all-time great stature. Legacy's forever set. And it's definitely one of the all-time greats as a result. Maybe this one elevated him to a higher level. By his own admission, he said so much was expected of him. Never could get to that level again either, because you could probably say that what he took on that fight was beaten out of him also. I mean, he never got anything remotely close. But it was 35 years ago today. The super fight of all super fights took place. High expectations, raised the bar, and superseded those high expectations when Chavez and Taylor fought at the Las Vegas Hilton in Las Vegas on HBO's World Championship Boxing at its apex. The thing was with this one, we were 6 weeks removed from Tyson being upset by James Buster Douglas. The sport was still in the buzz. Chavez and Taylor on this night kept that buzz going. I mean, it kept it going and got to a higher level. I mean, it was Fight of the Year in 1990, widely regarded as a fight of the 90s decade, rightfully so. Terrific fight between 2 terrific young unbeaten champions at the purest peaks of their careers. And this was the perfect have-it-all fight. Anything you want, you got it. And this was the cream of the crop, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of great fights after it, but maybe nothing comes close to this. Maybe some other ones in action. But we talk about the stakes that was on the line with these two champions at the highest level in the super lightweight division. That's what you got 35 years ago today at the Las Vegas Hilton in Las Vegas between Julio Cesar Chavez and Medrick Taylor. Boy, I wish we could go back to having fights like that. It was something special back then. As Jim Lampley once said about this fight, it was the biggest little fight money can buy, and it certainly was. That fight had it all. That's one of those fights I could probably watch 15 to 20 times and never get tired of watching it. I could probably watch it 15 to 20 more times and still won't get tired of it. It was just that sensational of a fight. And I will wrap this up by saying you will see this episode on the other platforms here tonight, because I am venturing into bigger and better ventures. For those of my new followers, I always conclude by saying one thing, a bit of a life perspective. Always make self-care your number one priority in all of life. Because if you take care of yourself first, good things will always follow you. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. That is the only thing that matters in life, is you taking care of yourself first. That will wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I will be back tomorrow night. I look forward to talking to you guys again. This show will be live on other platforms here in a few minutes. But until then, I hope everybody has themselves a wonderful rest of the 19th of March 2025. But until then, take care of yourselves. Good night. God bless, and enjoy the day.